But let's talk some Wimbledon because you and I do like to talk a lot of tennis whenever we get the opportunity. And now we are ready to get going with, I think it is still fair to say, the most illustrious of the four slams each and every year at the All England Club. When I look at the men's side here, and it does feel like, okay, is it just a two-horse race with a newly minted number one player in the world, in Alcaraz, versus Novak Djokovic, who just beat Carlos at the French Open to win his record 23rd slam. To you, is it just a two-horse race on the men's side, or can you make strong cases for some upsets?
I don't even think it's a two-horse race. Novak has won 28 straight matches at Wimbledon. He's won 84 of the last 100 sets he's played. This guy, he's gone to 3 5-set matches in the last 28. One was against Jannik Sinner. The other two were against guys you might have heard of, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal.
Heard of those guys.
Okay, so my point is, when you look at it, think about this. Go back to 2017, the last time Novak didn't win. In between there in 16 and 17, Murray and Federer won. Novak has won 6 of the last 8 Wimbledons. You got to go back to, I think, 2002, Leighton Hewitt won Wimbledon. Since that point in time, there have been, I believe, 19 Wimbledons played up until that point. They've all been won by 4 guys. Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, and Andy Murray. Carlos Alcaraz is a tremendous player on clay, tremendous player on the hard courts. Grass is a different surface. Novak's got a far better serve than he had when he came up in his career. Alcaraz doesn't have that level of serve. And the one thing that I don't think Alcaraz is aware of yet, to win a Grand Slam, yes, he did win at the U.S. Open, but remember, Novak didn't participate. The one thing to keep in mind is the level of fitness that Novak, that Rafael Nadal have at this thing. They can go for 9 sets. It doesn't make a difference. They are so fit and ready to go, and you can see Alcaraz breaking down in the French Open. Listen, Alcaraz will eventually be the guy, and he's ranked number 1, but the rankings to me don't mean anything. Novak is still head and shoulders. The price, I took him at minus 140 to win Wimbledon. To me, the price should be minus $2 or so.
It's amazing because it is minus $1.60.
Yeah.
And the thing that surprises me about that conversation, and when you looked at, hopefully if you're watching on VSiN.com, you saw the graphic. Like what Joker's done at Wimbledon is almost like what Sampras did at Wimbledon back in the day. But we don't regard, at least out of the 23 slams, we feel like he's the best all-court player we've ever seen. He's not a grass specialist. Why is it that some of these other names, and again, we'll talk about some of these other guys if there's going to be an upset, Murray back in there, but it's not the same Andy Murray that's won Wimbledon a couple times here. How is he doing this? How is he dominating at this particular venue in an advancing age? That's not normal.
Well, the first advantage he has is he's the greatest returner of serve in the history of the sport, right? You could have a weapon like a John Isner in theory, but if you are on a second serve or you're in a situation where you've got to be able to get a serve in, this guy is still able to put the ball back in play. A few years ago, it might have been 2019, Roger Federer had 2 match points on serve.
Yes.
And Roger Federer is, to me, the most talented player ever. You would take the only guy I would have probably taken in that scenario over Federer to serve out with 2 match points would have been Pete Sampras. And Federer couldn't get it done against Novak, and he ends up losing 13-12 in the 5th set. So I think that's kind of where you look at it. And then here's the other thing. His ability to rally, he can just sit there and rally all day. And he's just better than everybody else. And it's reflected in the odds. Look, if you like Alcaraz, I would wait till the final to bet him. There's no reason to bet him now and just, hope he faces off against Novak, and you're going to get a plus money price of probably about 2 and change. You won't get as good of 350. But remember, Carlos Alcaraz, this is only his 3rd Wimbledon. He's gone to the 2nd round and the 4th round. It's not like this guy's been dominant. I think the name gets him up there at plus 350, but overall, there's just not any, to me, I would not take him.
So maybe a one-horse race, Amal, in your eyes, but it is amazing that you go from minus $1.60 then to over $3 betting underdog in Alcaraz, and then we're getting 20 to 1s. I mean, we're not even getting 10 to 1s or 8 to 1s. It just feels like there's a huge demarcation line here on the men's side.
There's no question about it. And look, without an injury to Novak, this tournament is his. The only question to me is I would probably set the over-under a number of sets lost at about 4.5 or 3.5.
So are there other markets in the men's side that you might look to, maybe a quarters market for some of the other names that you can find some value in? I look at Tiafoe as another great American hopeful here. Charismatic guy, fun game to watch. We mentioned Andy Murray. I don't know if he can turn back the hands of time and make a quarters run. Is there anybody else that maybe is off the beaten path that you can find a good number at?
To me, I think if Nick Kyrgios is right,
Yeah.
The problem with betting Nick is it's always a roll of the dice. You've got to worry about this guy for 12 sets. To get to the quarters, right? You're not sure how he's going to perform. Is he going to be engaged? Nick against Rafael Nadal in a final, or against Novak, he's trying to hit a tweener. I mean, you can't have that. So that's the one area where I would be cautious in betting him.
He's minus $1.50 in his opening round match.
Yeah, against David Goffin. I mean, and Goffin has been injury plagued. Is not the same player he once was when he was a top tenor. He doesn't have that power serve on the grass. Nick should be able to roll. But at the end of the day, you just don't know if maybe in the second set, Nick's decided, I want to be out in a pub in London.
And that's the thing with Nick, a finalist a year ago, right, against Novak, but you just don't know mentally where he's going to be. Okay, let's flip it over to the women's side. Is it more open in your eyes? Because, again, Iga's coming off her win at the French Open, and yet you got 5 weeks now, and you got to go from that red clay to a completely different surface. This should not be her best surface. But what do you make of Iga's opportunity here to go back-to-back in slams?
Well, I think it's going to be tough. First of all, when you look at the odds, I just think the odds makers don't realize she's not a grass court player. She's never gotten past the fourth round at Wimbledon.
Right.
This is power serving. Elena Rybakina, Ariana Sabalenka, Madison Keys. These are players that have a chance. Madison Keys this morning in Eastbourne took apart Coco Gauff. And, she wins, I think, 6-3, 6-3. Keys has a forehand that's as good as anybody on the women's side. So it's going to come down to serving. Swiatek's a tremendous player, but again, clay is different than grass. And so I think this would be a challenge for her in this matchup when you look at it. I would not bet her at the odds that she's at. Not saying that she can't potentially have her first breakthrough at Wimbledon, but if you look at her successes, it's been 3 times at the French Open. It's like Rafa, right? Rafa's a great player, but at the end of the day, Roger and Novak have always been better on the other surfaces.
So you mentioned Keys and you mentioned Coco Gauff, so I look for some American women that might be able to make runs. Could we see some runs here from some of these Americans as we get into the 4th of July and beyond?
I don't think so. Right now, when you look at it, some of the American names, I was watching Coco play, and I got to tell you, until she improves her forehand, she is never going to win a Grand Slam. She's got to improve. She's just not good enough over 7 matches. 16-1 on her is way too short. I'll tell you a couple names to pay attention to. Donna Vekic is playing very, very well. She's at 20-1. I think she's one. I mentioned Keys at 35-1. Kudermetova, I don't think she can put together 7 matches in a row, but she's got a great serve, usually in top 5 in aces on the women's side. A good opportunity. Yelena Ostapenko is playing well. Remember, she won a French Open Slam. She's dangerous on the grass courts. And then another name to kind of turn back the hands of time that's won 2 Grand Slams at Wimbledon, Petra Kvitova.
Yeah.
She's a lefty. She's got that outside swing on the left-handed serve when you're in the ad court. So she could be one that's you want to pay attention to.
So, again, when you mentioned Swiatek here at plus 310, coming off that win. And look, we regard her as the best player right now in the women's game. What's going to be the biggest deterrent from her winning Wimbledon? Is just the speed of the grass courts?
A little bit. And the grass courts have slowed down over the years. When Sampras was playing, they were so fast, right? Like Pete would break serve and he wouldn't even try in your return game because he knew you were never going to break his serve. And so the challenge here is, can she keep up with the Rybakinas and the Sabalenkas who can just absolutely hit you right off the court? And the advantage of the Grand Slam is you don't play every day. You have a day in between the matches, so that should help out. And these matches at Wimbledon are different than the French Open. French Open, you can wind up with, on the women's side, 3 hours, 3:15. Yeah. Here, you're looking at max 2 hours. The sets are generally playing 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah, it's not as taxing physically.
Correct, exactly.
To get through some of these rounds. Okay, so on the women's side, if we're going to look for some deeper picks here, possibly for quarters runs or 4th round runs, who might be a name to watch that you say, all right, there's a value here, but maybe not all the way to the semis or the finals?
I think the one thing on the women's side, it's a crapshoot, right? You can take so many different names. If you look at it over the last few, minus Serena and Venus, there's just been so many other players that have come through at a variety of times. Looking at that list I mentioned, I wouldn't take Krejcikova right now. I just don't think she's completely back to form, and grass is not necessarily her strength. But, again, these odds are a little bit shorter on Rybakina and Sabalenka, but Kvitova, 13-1. I think she's got a great shot to get through to the quarters. Then you can hedge the other way. Jabeur, I'm a little bit concerned about injury. Mukova competes, but again, I don't know if this will be a surface for her. She got to the French Open final. But still, I think this would be a tough one. Ostapenko has been playing well, and she's erased the double faults in her games.
So Novak on the men's side, women's side, pick you for a winner?
Yeah, I don't know about the women's side. Novak all day. You can have the whole field. I'll take Novak all day.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.